Welcome to Magic Hour with Paul Chappell and our special guest host Curtis Hood back again. And we are reviewing Shazam!
Shazam! It was a good one, man.
Yeah, I liked it.
It was one of the best I've seen DC put out. And I don't think they tried so hard on this one. I mean, they just had fun making it.
Well, I read that they were pretty much doing the movie big again, but with instead of him, well, he does two things. He becomes an adult and he becomes a superhero. So that's a double thing, double entendre.
Yeah,
is that what you call it? So it was interesting from that aspect.
So I wasn't the only one that saw the big Easter egg in it, and when they were fighting in the toy store,
right? And he jumps on the piano. That was a direct tribute to Big, and I think it worked for the most part. I had a few problems because there was so much origin story. Because they not only do the origin story for the kid Billy Batson, but they also do it for the villain.
Right, yeah.
And when the movie opens, you think it's the Billy Batson, but it turns out it's actually the villain. And if I was going to say I had problems with anything, I was kind of confused. I was like, well, who is that kid? Because then, should we go ahead and spoil a little bit?
Well, you really... Let me give everybody a backstory on Shazam first before we get into the spoilers. If you're not familiar with Shazam, it started out in the 1940s under a company called Fawcett Comics. And it was created by two guys, C.C. Beck and Bill Parker at Fawcett Comics. And then it got picked up by DC. I believe it was in the 70s, 1973. And it's a story of this kid who comes in contact with a wizard who is been alive for 3,000 years, has been holding off the forces of evil, particularly the 7 deadly sins, and that he's old and he's about to die and he's got to pass on his powers. And so the kid has to be proven worthy, and then he's got to say the wizard's name, and the wizard's name is Shazam. And Shazam stands for S is the wisdom of Solomon, H is the strength of Hercules, A the stamina of Atlas, Z is the power of Zeus, A is the courage of Achilles, and M is the speed of Mercury. So that's the backstory. The other side of that is when it was created, the Billy Batson was called Captain Marvel. Right. Well, as you can understand, there was a little issue with that when Stan Lee and his Marvel Comics came around, and they had a Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
But it was so close that DC decided it wasn't worth the fight, and so they changed it to calling him Shazam. So now we can get into the movie part. So spoiler alerts coming up your way right now.
So the kid is sitting in the car he's with his dad and his brother, and they're going to, I guess, a Christmas party?
Going to Granddad's house.
Okay. And he gets transported to the little cave, what's called a Cave of Eternity, where the Shazam wizard resides, and there's statues on the wall of the 7 deadly sins. They're encased in they've been imprisoned in statues, and there's an orb on one side of the room, and the kid, instead of reaching for the staff, he goes after the orb, right?
Because the statues are, if you're weak of heart, the statues can influence you.
Right, and he reaches for the orb, and the wizard deems him not worthy because he's tempted by the dark side,
the evil side,
so to speak.
Right.
And so he gets returned to the car, and the experience immediately. I'm forgetting what happened. He causes an accident.
Yeah, he was freaking out that he wasn't chosen, and he was, I want to go back, and then
and then
they already set up that the dad and brother don't really like him. They think he's weak, and because of that, he causes a spin out, and then they get T-boned.
Now let me ask you something. Do you feel like the Shazam wizard caused because this kid turns out to be the villain later in the story? Did he, in a way, inadvertently cause his life to be ruined? Because his father is crippled in this accident. He becomes obsessed with finding this cave again.
Well, yeah, certainly the experience led to. I don't even know what the bad guy's name was.
Sivana. Dr. Thaddeus Savannah.
Okay.
Played by the great Mark Strong. And it was kind of funny because Mark Strong is usually in those. Who's that director that did Kingsman? Matthew Vaughn.
Oh, okay.
He's usually in Matthew Vaughn movies.
He plays a very good bad guy. Right, that's a double negative.
Yeah, he does. He does. Yeah, but he played Merlin in Kingsman, and he in something else.
He's been in a bunch.
Matthew Vaughn loves to use them though. So I for a minute I thought, is this a Matthew Vaughn movie? Because it kind of felt like it could be. He's pretty good at doing comic book movies. He did First Class, the X-Men First Class movie, but it was he did an excellent job on this movie. This felt kind of like you said. Who did an excellent job? Whoever
directed this movie.
Some guy named David F. Sandberg, and I looked up his history, and he hasn't done anything noteworthy. He did a movie called Annabelle Creations or something. Sounds like a horror movie.
Well, to give you an idea, I went on opening night of this, and it sold out. Yeah. The first showing sold out. I went in with low expectations on this movie because, honestly, the trailer was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of over, like a million other trailers, and so I was like, well, they probably picked all the best scenes. And
to me, it looked like a kid's movie.
It really did.
And it was a kid's movie. But it had some very funny parts that I liked. There was a lot of adults in the theater who were like just dying laughing.
Man, the majority of the audience I was in was adult. There were kids, but to give you an idea of how good the movie was, I could count on one hand, and I've been to a lot of movies, but I can count on one hand the amount of times at the end of the movie when the credits roll, people standing up and applauding. Yeah. And this happened at the end of this movie.
Oh, okay.
At least in my theater. I don't know what happened where you watched it.
No, they didn't applaud.
So there were people standing up and applauding, and I was one of them because I was like, that was well done. Well done. And, the story is you've got... after this happens, which has happened somewhere, I guess, in the 60s or something, early 70s, when it opens up and this kid gets rejected.
It was 1974.
Okay, 1974.
Yeah.
And then, so that scene cuts after the wreck, and then it opens back up, and it's in modern day. And you meet the main character.
It's another kid.
Asher Angel, playing Billy Batson.
Yeah.
And... he is a troubled kid who was abandoned, or he lost his mother. He wandered off from her at a fair when he was little, and he ends up in the foster system, and he's on the search to try to find his mother, and people keep telling him that if your mother wanted to be found, she'd have been looking for you, but you're looking for somebody who's not looking for you, and... so he's very angsty and very... his opening scene, he locks these cops in
a pawn shop.
In a pawn shop so he can use their computer to try and search for his mom.
Yeah.
And...
he's got a whole notebook, and he's got the name of his mime. They're all marked off. He's like 30 names marked off.
Right, and he's very very smart because of, I mean, I would have never thought at 15 to lock some cops in a pawn shop while I use their computer in their car. I'd have never thought of doing that.
Yeah, that was kind of, it was ingenious, but it's like, how did he get the pawn shop open? Because I guess he was trying to say it was being robbed.
Yeah, and where were the people that actually ran the pawn shop?
Yeah, I didn't.
That was.
I didn't understand that part. I guess I don't know. How did he get it open? Was my question. But yeah, I guess it really doesn't matter.
But then the guy who played Shazam, what was it? Zachary Levi.
Yeah.
What was he on other than that? What was
the only thing I know him from was that show Chuck.
Okay, that was Chuck. Okay.
Yeah, he was Chuck.
Well, let's just say Chuck got swole. If that was him. If that was him in the suit.
I've seen some pictures on the internet of him working out, but he was not that big. I think there was a little bit of padding.
Or CGI or something.
No, I think it was just padding.
Okay, well they had him like
he was big.
Ripped.
But I don't think he was quite that big, because I've seen some pictures of him when I always look up pictures that I might use the show during while we're talking about the movie.
Right.
I didn't. Nah, he's not that big, I don't think.
Well, he was very good in this, and we'll go back to what we talked about, to the ode to Big, the movie Big, with Tom Hanks. So there's a scene in it where Shazam, Billy Batson as Shazam, is fighting this guy who went back. He figured out, he was obsessed, like you said, and he had figured out how to get back to Shazam's lair, the wizard's lair. And instead of trying to get Shazam's power, he went straight for that orb as a grown man. Mm-hmm. And so he was the champion of evil. Right. He became the champion of evil, and he absorbed the 7 deadly sin statues that were in that cave. And so he can pretty much do everything that Shazam can do, except he is obsessed with it, so he knows how to do it better. He can fly, he can fight, he can, do all the things that Shazam can do. And
he can unleash these monsters too, which I thought was pretty cool. That first scene where he goes to see his dad.
I know, that was really good.
Wow, that was a great scene, man. It was like, because you didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know whether he's going there just to glow, or he was going there to hurt them or to kill them or whatever. I had no idea what was going to happen. And they made it pretty clear, this guy,
he was wiping everybody out.
He is evil to the core. He's menacing. He's powerful. I mean, the contrast between Shazam is running around taking selfies with people,
charging them
money. This guy is going into boardrooms, killing people with monsters, and just, you're like, oh my God, what is? And when they finally meet, you're like, what is? Wow.
And how
is he going to survive this?
He kicks the crap out of Shazam initially, because Shazam doesn't know how to use his powers.
Right.
But they end up in a what is the name of the toy store? S.C. Schultz or from Big? It's a big toy store in New York.
But they were in Philadelphia.
Well, they're in Philadelphia, but this was the same toy store, I guess, a chain of it.
Yeah.
And they're fighting through it, and he's throwing Batman at him, and he's like, I'm Batman, and he throws it at him. And then he gets knocked backwards, and he rolls over one of those pianos on the floor.
Yeah.
And so they, stop the whole fight for him to start, playing on, and you're thinking, if the bad guy comes over here and they start doing chopsticks, I'm done. I'm leaving. But the bad guy knocks him out the window, and then they keep fighting.
Yeah, I think the movie was teetering on the verge of being a little bit ridiculous at times, but then it worked. They will pull it back, and
it worked so well in keeping you laughing, interested, action-packed, a little bit of drama, a little bit of sadness.
How great will this movie be for any kid who's in a foster home?
No crap, man.
I mean, if you were a kid in a foster home and you see this movie, you've got to be over the moon right now. Just the way they portray foster families, or the foster parents, how they talk about. They just talk about all the shame these kids feel and wanting to find their real parents, and Billy Batson doesn't really want to accept his this family. And they love him. They want to love him. They want to show him love, but he's all about finding his mother. And then he finally finds her, and she's a total piece of crap. Who doesn't care about him.
Who didn't look for him.
In fact, she saw him with the police, and she just decided to leave him. So that was.
And you
had some intense.
Earlier on, when that social worker was telling him, well, you're looking for somebody who's not looking for you.
Right.
And I was thinking, oh, it's going to end up that she ended up kidnapped by somebody and wasn't able, or she died or something. And so you're like, what an awful person to tell him something like that. But then it ends up being true in the end.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man, that was hardcore.
They picked the perfect guy to be his foster dad, Jerry from Walking Dead.
Yeah. I was really glad to see him, man. He did such a good job. Everybody was cast. The little girl that played his little foster sister.
Yeah, she was great. Faith Herman.
Okay. And
Darla Dooley. Is that her name? Yeah. Dudley. Darla Dudley.
And Freddie, star of the show. Freddie, that kid.
Yeah, he has a disabled.
Yeah, the disabled foster brother who tells him, "Oh man, this gets very Game of Thrones around here."
This setup though, is this not the perfect little ensemble of minority? You got the Asian kid, you got the little black girl. You got the disabled kid, you got the Hispanic kid, and because there were 7 of them, right? Well,
and then the older sister.
But it was like the perfect little.
Yeah, it was a very blended family.
Yeah,
very blended family,
which made a difference. At the very end. What did you think about
at the end? Now,
when they all became...
that was homage to the continuing story of Shazam. I read about this, that there was a Shazam family.
Okay.
That was
I was wondering, but I was like, is this based on the comics? Is this just something they did?
But there were so many different stories and breakoffs from the original Shazam comic that the writers and director found a way to just meld it all into one movie. And of course, if you saw the end, you stayed around after the credits. Nobody leaves a comic book movie anymore until after the credits are over, because you're going to get a sneak peek into the next one.
I leave sometimes. If I got to go to the bathroom, I'm like, nah, I'm not sitting.
It was funny because everybody got up and clapped, and then they sat right back down and let the credits roll, and then nobody left the theater. And then it takes you to the prison cell where dude's locked up, and he's writing the symbols on the wall. Yeah. And then somebody starts talking to him. And it's the caterpillar from the very first scene of the Shazam's lair.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's interesting. Because you're like, what? There's a reason that they do everything in good movies,
Well, that's setting up the sequel.
And that's setting up the sequel, so.
That's going to be the bad guy. But I thought, was it Black Adam?
Black Adam was
supposed to be the villain?
The anti-hero. He's kind of like Deadpool is. Okay. I don't think he's like a bad guy per se, but he's like the anti-hero.
They're doing that movie with Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, because he was going to be in this movie, and then they decide they're going to do a separate movie.
The Black Adam?
Yeah.
Which is, like, yeah, and Black Adam is, according to the comics, is somebody who got part of Shazam's powers at another time in history.
Okay.
So,
because I don't know anything.
We will review that one too. So
I didn't know anything about Shazam, Black Adam, anything. So
did you know that in the 1970s there was a TV show called Shazam?
No.
Look it up.
I have to look.
It's very cornflakes, man. It's very corny, but it's basically the same story.
It is okay.
It's more based on the actual comics, the old comics. So
you got any criticisms?
I've yet to see the absolutely perfect movie. So there were things that didn't make sense and questions. But I wouldn't say, even when they got off kilter a little bit, they always brought it right back in, and pulled you right back into the story. So I'm going to say I was a very big fan of Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to say that this was probably top 2 of any DC movie I've seen.
They've done very well with the individual movies. Like, I like Man of Steel. That was the first one. I liked Wonder Woman and Aquaman. All of these have been stellar movies. The only missteps, I think, were, Batman vs. Superman and Justice League, which was just absolute crap. But they've been doing good with all the original movies so far. I think in a lot of ways they've rivaled Marvel.
Is there an army tank on your front drive?
FedEx truck.
Oh.
Is that for us?
It's bringing him some more Amazon.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I ordered.
But I would say that...
Should I get that? Anyway, no. I can't think of anything I ordered, so...
I would say that it... I'm reserving a 5-star rating for the movie that has never been made. So I'm going to say 4 stars.
No, I'll give it 5 stars.
Okay.
I will say there's a few things I had a problem with. Like I said, the beginning I got kind of confused because you got 2 different. One kid is like 8 or something, and then they switch to another kid who's even younger, who's like 5. And you're like, who are these kids? And like I got confused about that. So there was a lot of origin story stuff, and I know they have to do that, but it like I just thought it was a little bit too much of that. It took a while before he actually
to get into the story. Yeah.
He actually got to the cave and everything. And I would also say, if I had another criticism, that final battle went on a little bit too long. And I mean they had real stakes at the beginning of it because he pretty much traps his whole foster family at that amusement park.
Right.
And you're thinking, oh my God, what if one of these kids dies or something? And because that's always the danger with a superhero movie, that's why they have alter egos, because the danger is the villains always go after your family or who.
They even made reference to that. Like,
yeah, but
what was it? Freddy's like
you're thinking, oh, okay, somebody's going to die, or somebody's going to get hurt, and nothing really happens, and then they just kind of just it keeps going on, and then the villain has this monologue scene, which they kind of made fun of. You know
oh yeah, he's like, what?
What are you saying?
What are you saying? What? I can't hear you.
So they were playing stuff. I mean, at a certain point, I was like getting impatient. I was like, this villain went from being so menacing to being kind of a joke, and then he creates his own Justice League, basically.
Yeah, he turns all 7 of the foster kids into Shazams.
Yeah, but it was. At the same time, it was ridiculous, but it was also very cute because you're like, they're still kids.
Yeah, because they all look like they're grown and
And
but they act their age.
And it's like any of those actors that they chose for those Shazams could have their own movie.
Yeah.
Because they got some good looking actors.
Right.
And it was like, wow.
Well,
are we going to have another movie with these characters? So
how about...
I don't know whether that was permanent or they never referenced whether they actually have the powers at the end.
Like if they continue to have the powers.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if they say Shazam, they did the same thing that he did.
Right.
You know?
That would be interesting to see a sequel.
And the reason in the story that he needed to do this was because at this point, the only way they could defeat the bad guy was if they could get all of the 7 deadly sins out of him.
Right.
And then he became vulnerable. But if there was even one still in the eye that he had, then he was impossible to kill.
Right.
And so
I like how they figured that out too. They threw the batarang.
Yeah, the batarang.
There was a lot of cute, cool little things I liked about the movie. I like the fact that they referenced that people have already seen Superman. And so the public's actually not as shocked that a superhero appears because they're already used to seeing
in this universe. They've already been introduced to
Superman
and all, and
even
the bad crap that's come along with them.
And Superman made an appearance.
Yeah, at least his suit did from the neck down.
Who plays Superman? Jim Caviezel? Is that his name?
Yeah.
He is actually going to appear in this movie and make a cameo, but he had scheduling conflicts, so they just put somebody in his suit.
They couldn't afford it.
No, he was actually going to do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was.
Well, I mean, it worked because there was a part in the movie where Freddy's character is being bullied by these two kids at school, of course, because there's a bully in every teen movie. Mm. And, hey, bullies got to work too. Anyway, the way that Freddy gets out of getting beat up this one time is he says that he's going to have one of the 100 names that they were trying to name him, the Grease Lightning and all these different things. Yeah. He was going to have him come have lunch with him because they were personal friends. And during the movie, of course, Shazam is off, like you said, taking selfies and charging people for to do the lightning show he does. And
he's doing basically what any kid would do if he had power.
Yeah, 15 years old. You're very selfish at 15, especially if you got superpowers. So to remedy that, after he realizes the importance of family, the deep lesson in this movie, Shazam shows up to lunch, and then he's like, and I brought a friend. And then in walks the torso of Superman with his lunch tray. So it was a great movie.
I like that scene where the little kid's playing with the toys. And then he looks out the window and they're actually battling.
Yeah, he does like that.
Whoa! This was definitely, if you're a kid, man, if you're a kid around between 8 and 14 or something, man, you gotta love this movie. This movie is...
So we would highly recommend it. Thumbs up, 5 stars, all that good stuff. So you need to go check it out.
As someone who did not want to see this movie after seeing the first trailer and not knowing anything about the character, I was blown away by it.
Well, you know what it made me do, and probably you as well, for the show and for other things, is I went back and started researching Shazam because I was like, I thought it was going to be cornflakes, man. I thought it was going to be a corny, silly, greatest American hero type, superhero thing, which it kind of was, but it was in a little corny. The best way possible.
It was a little corny.
It worked
but like
very
I said,
well.
They would pull it back before it got, they got ridiculous. So I enjoyed it. I thought they did a good job.
So, in reference to what's coming up in the future, do you want to talk about that and what we're going to do?
What's that?
With the Game of Thrones?
Yeah, sure.
So, we want you guys to come back because real soon, I think it's next weekend, the final season of Game of Thrones is premiering. And it has been 538 days since an episode of Game of Thrones was on HBO. So
has it?
Yes, it has. I did the math.
Okay.
And people tell me the fact that I know that is very disturbing. But we are going to do a prediction show before the first episode airs on HBO. And so come back and check that out. And then come back after that to see what we thought of each episode going through to the finale, the show finale. This is it. After these 6 episodes on HBO, no more Game of Thrones. So we don't know what we're going to do with our lives, but
we're going to start watching the prequels, that 3 prequel shows they got.
Oh yeah, I hope they're. It's so hard to bottle the lightning again. You know, ask Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Better Call Saul is good.
They just delayed Better Call Saul. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, they delayed it. It's not going to come out till 2020.
Well, maybe they're picking that up from Game of Thrones. It says absence makes the heart grow fonder.
I think they just want time. I think it's going to be the last season. I think they needed more time.
Yeah, like I said, it's really hard to bottle the lightning twice. You know, and Kurt Sutter knows this too from Sons of Anarchy, because he's tried 2 or 3 shows after Sons of Anarchy and nothing has taken off like Sons of Anarchy did. So anyway, thanks for coming by. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to Paul's channel, and we will be back and see you on the next episode.
See you later.